In the heart of Europe, a wall divided a city, a nation, and a world. For over 28 years, the Berlin Wall stood as a symbol of the Cold War, separating families, friends, and a once unified Germany. But how did this wall come to exist? And why did it become so important in the struggle between East and West? This is the story of the Berlin Wall, a concrete barrier that divided not just a city, but the ideals of freedom and oppression, democracy and dictatorship. That a city at war, the end of World War II, marked the beginning of a new era, one defined by the bitter rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Germany, once defeated, was divided into 4 occupation zones: the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, France. But Berlin, Germany's capital, was also split into 4 parts, even though it was deep within the Soviet-controlled Eastern Zone. East Berlin became the capital of the German Democratic Republic, GDR, a communist state controlled by Moscow. West Berlin, on the other hand, became an enclave of democracy and freedom, protected by the United States and its Western allies. But this unusual division would not last long. The escape route as the 1950s began, life in East Berlin under communist rule grew increasingly difficult. Citizens were subject to political repression, surveillance, and a lack of freedom. Thousands of East Germans, frustrated with the regime, sought refuge in West Berlin. From 1949 to 1961, over 2.5 million people fled East Germany, crossing into West Berlin to escape the harsh conditions of the East. The GDR could not tolerate such a massive exodus of citizens, especially as many were educated professionals and skilled workers. The birth of the wall by the summer of 1961, the situation in Berlin had reached a boiling point. The Soviet Union, led by Nikita Khrushchev, demanded that the United States, Britain, and France leave West Berlin, claiming it was rightfully part of East Germany. The West refused to comply, and tensions mounted. On August 13, 1961, the East German government, with the support of the Soviet Union, took drastic action. They began building a wall, a barrier to stop the mass migration of people from east to west. The Berlin Wall was born. In the beginning, it was made of simple fencing and barbed wire. But it would quickly evolve into an imposing concrete structure, complete with watchtowers, guard dogs, and soldiers armed with rifles. Life under the wall, the Berlin Wall, became the physical manifestation of the Cold War. It symbolized the divide between the free world and the oppressive communist regime of the Soviet Union. For families torn apart by the wall, the emotional toll was immense. Parents were separated from children. Lovers were forced to live on opposite sides. East Berliners could no longer freely visit the vibrant West. The wall also led to a new era of border patrols, espionage, and surveillance. Over time, the GDR built an even more formidable structure, a wall that would eventually stretch over 96 miles and divide East and West Berlin for almost 3 decades. The wall in the eyes of the world. While the wall stood, the world watched. For many, the Berlin Wall represented the harsh reality of the Cold War, the oppression of the Soviet Union, and the lengths to which the communist regime would go to maintain control. Throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, people attempted to escape from East Berlin to the West. Some were successful, while many others lost their lives in the attempt. Families threw notes over the wall, trying to send messages to loved ones on the other side. People risked everything to be free. And as the years passed, the Berlin Wall became more than just a barrier. It became a symbol of hope for some and oppression for others. The political pressure mounts. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was weakening under the leadership of Mikhail Gorbachev, who introduced reforms such as glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. These reforms weakened the iron grip the Soviets had on Eastern Europe. In 1987, U.S. President Ronald Reagan famously stood at the Brandenburg Gate in West Berlin and demanded, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." This call for freedom and unity resonated with people around the world, further escalating the pressure on the East German regime. The fall of the wall in 1989, the GDR was facing growing unrest. The people of East Germany were fed up with the regime's failures, and protests were spreading across the country. On November 9th, 1989, an announcement was made. East Germans would now be allowed to cross into West Berlin. Confusion led to chaos. People flooded the wall, and within hours, East Germans were knocking down the wall with hammers and chisels. They celebrated their newfound freedom, tearing down the concrete barrier that had divided them for nearly 3 decades. The legacy of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Berlin Wall, marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union and the communist regimes of Eastern Europe. Germany was reunified, and the Cold War began to thaw. The fall of the Berlin Wall symbolized the victory of democracy and freedom over oppression. Why the Berlin Wall matters today. The Berlin Wall stands as a symbol of the human desire for freedom, the dangers of division, and the importance of unity. The wall is no longer a physical barrier, but its legacy lives on in the way we view politics, freedom, and global unity. Never forgotten in Berlin, pieces of the wall are still on display in museums and memorials. They serve as a reminder of what can happen when walls, both literal and figurative, divide people. The Berlin Wall may have fallen, but its lessons continue to echo in today's world. Let us remember, walls can divide, but they can also be torn down. And when that happens, nothing can stop us.